You know that feeling when you've just finished a difficult, high stakes conversation and you walk into the next room only to find yourself snapping at someone you love over something completely trivial? Or perhaps you've noticed how a single frustrating email can suddenly make every subsequent task on your to do list feel like an insurmountable mountain. Most people never notice the quiet residue that one experience leaves on the next, but we all live within its influence. It is a subtle, persistent weight that shifts how we see the world, often without our permission. In our culture, we are often told that these moments are lapses in judgment or evidence of a lack of self-control. We are taught to view our feelings as a hindrance to clear thinking, a chaotic fog that we must push through to reach the rational side of ourselves. There is a certain kind of shame attached to the idea of being emotional, as if it were a defect in our character rather than a fundamental part of our design. But the truth is more complex than that. This isn't a flaw in your system. It is a pattern of human nature that has been working behind the scenes for as long as we have existed. What we are really talking about is the invisible hand that guides every choice we make. There is a revolution happening in the way we understand the human mind, one that suggests emotions are not the enemies of reason, but the primary drivers of it. We like to think of ourselves as logical beings who occasionally get distracted by feelings, but the science suggests we are actually emotional beings who use logic to justify the paths our hearts have already chosen. There is much more going on beneath the surface of a terrible decision than most people realize. To understand why this happens, we have to look at the bridge between our biology and our choices. Neuroscientists have spent decades studying people who have sustained injuries to the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, a part of the brain that integrates emotion and cognition. These individuals often retain their high IQs and their ability to solve complex logic puzzles, yet they find it nearly impossible to make even the simplest decisions, like what to eat for lunch or which pen to use. Without what researchers call somatic markers, those internal emotional signals that tell us how a choice feels, the brain becomes trapped in an endless loop of calculation with no way to tip the scales. We need emotion to move. Without it, we would be entirely passive, stuck in a state of perpetual indecision. This system was originally designed for our survival. Our emotions are meant to be a rapid response system, condensing a lifetime of experience into a single lightning-fast evaluation so we can react to a situation before our conscious mind even knows what's happening. In the wild, if you see a shadow move in the tall grass, you don't want to sit and calculate the probability of it being a predator. You want the fear to hit you instantly so your body is ready to run. The emotional brain cares far more about keeping you safe than it does about being objectively correct. It provides a series of false alarms because in the eyes of evolution, it's better to be wrong and alive than right and caught off guard. However, the same mechanism that saved our ancestors creates a unique challenge in the modern world through something called the carryover of incidental emotion. This is the psychological reality that an emotion triggered in one situation, like a traffic jam or an argument with a boss, automatically carries over into the next situation, even if that new situation has absolutely nothing to do with the original source of the feeling. We carry these feelings like a pair of tinted glasses. If you are angry, you don't just feel angry at the person who cut you off in traffic, you begin to see the entire world through a lens of certainty and control. You become more likely to take unnecessary risks because your anger makes you feel as though the outcome is predictable and within your power. Conversely, if you are fearful, you see the world as unpredictable and situationally determined, leading you to see high risk in even the safest bets. It is important to realize that no side of this is inherently right or wrong. We are all wired differently, and our nervous systems have adapted to our environments in ways that once served a purpose. Someone who grew up in an environment where they had to be constantly vigilant might have a more active fear response, which is a survival strategy, not a preference. Different people process the depth of their thoughts differently based on their emotional state. While a happy mood might lead us to use more shortcuts or heuristics, a sad mood can actually trigger more systematic, detailed, and analytical thinking. Neither state is better. They are simply different tools for different moments. This leads us to a quiet paradox in our daily lives. The very emotions that provide us with our deepest values and most profound connections are the same ones that can lead us to be out of control and incapable of waiting for a neutral state to return. There is a hidden cost to our survival-based speed. Because our emotions are designed for immediate adaptive concerns, they often make us impatient, driving us to seek immediate rewards when waiting would yield a far better outcome. We are often most convinced of our own logic when we are most under the influence of an incidental bias we haven't even noticed. If you have ever felt broken because you couldn't just be rational, please understand that your experience makes sense. Your brain is performing a task it has perfected over millions of years. You're not failing, you're participating in the human condition. The goal isn't to silence your emotions, which we've seen as impossible and even dangerous for making decisions, but to build a relationship with them. It's about recognizing the residue of the previous room before you start making choices in the current one. This journey of understanding how your internal compass works is a long one, and it's rarely a straight line. But once you begin to see the patterns, the world starts to look a little different. You start to notice when the glasses are on, and you learn how to wait for them to clear. If this reflection felt like a piece of a puzzle falling into place, there's a much deeper story to tell about how we can actually use this knowledge to reshape our environments and our lives.